Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Series. I'm pleased to be joined today by Woodside Energy's Acting Chief Executive, Liz Westcott. Thank you so much for being here today, Liz.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you.
We'll be talking all things Woodside, of course, and you just handed down your full-year numbers, your annual results, so congrats on those. But before we delve into those, we've got a diverse group of viewers and customers. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Woodside Energy name, but they might not have really dug into the details. So what would be the elevator pitch for, if you're speaking to that person, describing what Woodside does and what the most important commodities are for you?
Look, Woodside is a proudly Australian company, and it's one of the leading energy companies in Australia. We have a range of assets that produce oil, produce gas, produce LNG, and we're moving into a new energy portfolio as the energy transitions over time. We've been 70 years in Australia, long history of working in both Western Australia and East Coast Australia, and we now have a global footprint with offices in 11 countries.
Fantastic. And you just handed down your annual results, obviously, so let's touch on those because earnings did decline, but they actually really pleased the market. They seemed to beat the market's expectations. You hit an 18-month high, essentially, when you released your results. So production seemed to be a real bright spot. Record numbers above guidance. I mean, what do you put that down to?
So 2025 was a fabulous year for Woodside. And as you highlighted, we did hit record production. It was 198.8 million barrels of oil equivalent for the year. It was above the guidance that we had given the market. And so it was very well received. 2025 was also a very big year for us as we took the final investment decision on Louisiana LNG. And that's a LNG facility we're going to be building in Louisiana in the US, and it will enable Woodside to have global footprint in LNG and be a real powerhouse in LNG going forward. And then we've got a number of major projects under construction. And so 2025 saw us continue to deliver strongly on cost, on budget and schedule for these projects. So we started up first ammonia in the Beaumont New Ammonia facility. We then had Scarborough Energy Project closer to home. It's 94% complete at year-end 25, on target for first LNG in fourth quarter 26. We've got Trion, a deepwater project in Mexico. It's 50% complete. It's targeted to come online and on schedule for 2028. And then Louisiana itself, well, it's 22% complete now in construction. So a fabulous year in 2025, and it's been a pleasure sharing that news with everyone.
And was it the Sangomar project as well that really contributed to the lift in production over the course of the year?
Yeah, the production results we had really did come down to the fabulous performance of Sangomar, which is in Senegal, as well as the overarching reliability performance we had across our LNG facilities. So a really strong year across all of the assets, giving us the record production.
Yeah, so obviously you're ramping up production, which is, that's been one of the highlights. How does that help to bring down, I guess, costs when it comes to production cost per unit? Because that actually improved over the year as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. But I also wanted to think, by having a record production year, we were able to give back so much money to shareholders as well. And so part of the result we were able to share was 59 cents US cents per share dividend for the second half of the year. And again, that was above consensus for Woodside. So that's been a really great outcome. Now, when it comes to production costs, there's two parts to that equation, and there's the cost side. The assets have worked continuously on improving cost bases. And when you have a record year of production, we were able to have a record unit cost year as well, able to offset inflation and come in very strong. It's a really good demonstration, I think, of the operational excellence that Woodside's renowned for.
Yeah, so cost lowered on that front. You had production hitting record levels. I mean, unfortunately, something that no one can control, oil and gas prices, and obviously that was a little bit of a headwind over the course of the year. How much attention do you actually give to commodity price movements and all the headlines that come in almost daily as far as movements are concerned? Because it's one of those things that are important, but you can't really control.
Yeah, the Woodside organisation does look at pricing. We look at the opportunity that we could gain in the market. Volatility provides opportunity as well as risk. So we're constantly seeing, can we add value? And our marketing division has on average added 10% to the earnings before taxes in value in how they sell our market. We also then look at the risk, and so hedging's another important part of the organisation, and we've got about 10% of production hedged in 2026. So you sort of balance opportunity and risk with price. But if you're sitting at the front line, if you're an operator offshore, you're not looking at price, you're absolutely looking at production, cost, and the things that you can control, which really often come down to safety. And so if you run a very safe organisation, you then can really chase cost and production properly. So these are the focus areas for the front line.
Yeah, you mentioned some of your growth projects already, Scarborough, Beaumont as well, Trion is another. With Scarborough, I mean, how important is that going to be for the Woodside story moving forward? Because we hear this name a lot, but what is it actually going to mean, I guess, in the years ahead?
Yeah, so the Scarborough Energy Project, it's bringing on significant gas into Australia. It's going to add to our domestic gas capability in Western Australia, and it's going to provide energy security to our partners predominantly in Asia and our Japanese counterparts. So it's got a lot of material benefit to the country. It's going to bring in taxes, royalties. It brings in revenue, jobs. It does an awful lot of things. For Woodside, it's adding 5 million tonnes per annum immediately with a new train, and then it will be 8 million tonnes per annum when it's up and running using the facilities at Pluto. So the Scarborough Energy Project is going to continue our operations in Western Australia for decades. It's going to enable Woodside to continue to have LNG from Australia, and that's going to be important for Woodside going forward as we have portfolio of LNG, with LNG in the Atlantic Basin in the US and the Pacific Basin back here in Australia.
Yeah, so on that, the Louisiana LNG project that you've already mentioned, still under construction. It's still a few years away until that's up and running, I guess. But how are things progressing on the sell down process there as well? Because you've been recently finding those partners to help develop, I guess. Is it partly a case of sharing the love, the capital expenditure, if you will, as well, to bring them along the ride with you?
Yeah, so we took FID, the final investment decision at Louisiana, in 2025. And then pretty quickly after that, we were able to bring on Stonepeak as a partner in the infrastructure side. That took on 40% of the infrastructure company, and they loaded their contribution to 25 and 26, where they're doing 75% of the capital. Very important for Woodside because it allowed us the room to then bring the Scarborough Energy Project on and provide cash flow ourselves. So Stonepeak came on, and then we announced in fourth quarter that Williams also joined at the holdco level for Louisiana. So they're a 10% equity partner across the project. They bring really great expertise in pipeline management from the US. And so they are going to be the operator of the pipeline company, and they brought their Sequent trading platform, which are going to help us optimize. So great partnerships, and we continue to have interest at the holdco level. We're now below 60% of the capital funding with these two partners. And so it's allowing us to be very disciplined in how we consider new partners coming forward. But we're still keen to have maybe up to another 20% of the holding company with new partners, looking for strategic partners that bring complementary skills to Woodside that are here for the long term.
Great. And one of the issues, I think, in this day and age for investors specifically across the board is that we develop really short-term mindsets and outlooks on things, and it's hard to kind of look into the future. And obviously, it's something that Woodside needs to do. You need to know where your customers are going to be in 10, 20 years down the track. So what do you think the landscape might look like 10 or 20 years from here? And which countries and regions do you think will have the strongest demand and need for the products that you'll be selling over that time?
Yes, we do look a lot, as do many in our industry, at the future demand outlooks. If we look at the energy outlook, not thinking about which energy particularly, we see continued growth in energy. It's across the board. Society is needing more energy. If you're in an Asia country, you're needing it as you continue to decarbonise, as population growth continues, GDP continues to grow. These are driving energy. In Europe, there's a continued need for energy demand, and with data centres and those things are going to increase the amount of energy. And LNG, which is our core product, is seen to continue to be a really important part of that mix. We see LNG performing so many roles but particularly its ability to assist countries in decarbonisation, to swap out coal if you're in Asia, and then to be a backstop in Europe where they rely on the gas system so heavily. So LNG demand, expecting it to grow by 60% between now and mid-2035. So that's a lot. It's grown 65% since 2015. So it's on a really strong trajectory of demand growth. And there is a lot of supply coming to fill that. And so we're part of that picture. Bringing on Louisiana LNG will take Woodside to being one of the global LNG powerhouses. So we will have significant LNG both in Louisiana, in the US, and in our Australian portfolio, Scarborough adding to that. So strong markets both in Europe and in Asia. And we're well placed for both of those with these two locations.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, for your time as well, and congrats on the result. Good luck for the year ahead.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.